Hello, I'm Janet Rossant, President and Scientific Director of the Gairdner Foundation. I'm really excited to announce the 2020 recipients of the Canada Gairdner Awards, another incredible group of scientists. Built on the initial vision of Jim Gairdner, a Canadian stockbroker and philanthropist, the Canada Gairdner Awards have continually grown in prestige over the years. Over the past 60 years, we've awarded 387 scientists and researchers from 35 countries for their incredible work. And I'm very pleased to be here announcing the new class of individuals who've joined that group today. Annually, 7 awards are given. 5 Canada Gairdner International Awards for biomedical research, the John Dirks Canada Gairdner Global Health Award, specifically for impact on global health issues, and the Canada Gairdner Wightman Award, reserved for a Canadian scientist showcasing scientific excellence and leadership. I encourage you all to please share the news on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, using the hashtag Gairdner and tagging us at Gairdner Awards. At Gairdner, we pride ourselves on the caliber of our awardees, who are selected through our robust adjudication process, which involves leading scientists from all corners of the globe. I'd like to thank the members of our medical review panel, the medical advisory board, the Global Health and the Wightman Award adjudication committees for all their hard work in selecting this year's outstanding cohort. I'd also like to take a moment to thank our supporters. The federal government, through CIHR, has been a long-time partner. Their commitment is essential to our programming across the country. That gives students, trainees, faculty members, and the public access to the groundbreaking science that's changing our world. The Gairdner Foundation is also supported by our media partner, the Globe and Mail, who help us bring our laureate science to the public. The Canada Gairdner International Awards recognize seminal discoveries that have had a broad impact on biomedical science and health outcomes. The first 2020 Canada Gairdner International Award Laureates are Dr. Rolf Kemmler and Dr. Masatoshi Takaichi. They are awarded for their discovery, characterization, and biology of cadherins and associated proteins in animal cell adhesion and signaling.
Animal cells, including our human body, are made up of many cells. My challenge was to find out mechanisms by which cells stick to each other, which is a very important process for body formations. I discovered a protein named cadherin. If cadherin is lost, tissues fall apart. Also found there are many different cadherins expressed by different organs. For example, brain cells have one cadherin, intestine cells another type of cadherin. Through this mechanism, brain cells like to adhere to brain cells, intestine bind to intestines. They are not mixed up. So this is very important mechanism to maintain order in tissue constructions. Okay, discovery of cadherin greatly facilitates the study of how cells interact with each other, how cells stick to each other, and also it stimulates the work how cell-cell adhesion influence other biological processes such as cell differentiation and cell proliferation and cell motility. And also, other people, scientists, discovered cadherin mutation or dysfunction cause many kinds of diseases, such as brain disorder and cancers. So this field has been greatly expanded by discovery of cadherins. So in the future, in the basic field, we would be able to understand in more depth how our body is constructed. Also in medical field, our knowledge about cadherin would facilitate development of treatment for many different diseases like cancer and brain disorders.
Aim was to identify so-called cell adhesion molecules in the development of mouse early embryos. We used an immunological approach. That means we produced antibodies against the outside of the embryo and cultivated the embryo in the presence of these antibodies. And we identified which is the protein which is recognized by these behavioral active antibodies. And it turned out that this is what is later called E-cadherin, the member of the cadherin gene family. We identified in the cytoplasmic domain of this E-cadherin associated proteins which we called catenins. These proteins have a profound role in development. If one of these components is missing, the adhesive mechanism is defective, and this becomes even more apparent when you translate this now into medicine. And this is a hotspot in tumor research on carcinomas. So we, for example, developed monoclonal antibodies against E-cadherin, which are very helpful in clinics, so they can characterize the tumors which appeared. Well, when I learned that I won this award, this was something really unexpected for me. And I'm really very grateful to the Gairdner Foundation. Moreover, I'm very grateful that I won this award together with Masatoshi Takeichi, whom I know over decades.
Congratulations to Drs. Kemmler and Takeichi. Our next 2020 Canada Gairdner International Award Laureate is Dr. Roland Nusser. Dr. Nusser is awarded for pioneering work on the Wnt signaling pathway and its importance in development, cancer, and stem cells.
If you look at how organisms develop, starting from a single cell, dividing and then generating all kinds of specialized tissues, one major question that comes up is how is that actually being controlled? And what drives cells to proliferate in certain instances, and what makes them to become specialized in other events? There is a major role for how cells talk to each other during development. The challenge that we set out originally, which is now many years ago, was to understand how breast cancer in the mouse will be caused by a tumor virus, a retrovirus. We found that there was a gene that was present in the normal cells that became activated as a consequence of the retrovirus. What emerged from all of those studies is that there is a tight connection between how cells normally become regulated to proliferate, to divide, and the way that cells divide in an abnormal way, which happens in cancer. And that all of that together has brought that gene, which we now called Wnt, W-N-T, together in a framework where the regulation of that gene itself was very important to study, to understand what happens in normal development, but also when the gene becomes misregulated, how cancer arises. Is it possible in the future to use Wnt, which is a major signal to promote the growth of tissues and cells, to use it in a clinical setting? Can we use it to promote the healing of tissues? Is it possible to interfere with Wnt signaling in forms of human cancer? And there are now many attempts going on to regulate the Wnt pathway to inhibit the growth of cancer cells. And those efforts are now worldwide. I received a phone call from Janet Rosand, the president of the Gairdner Foundation. I knew about the prize. I was not aware of the fact that I was being nominated or considered. The importance of an award comes from the people who got that award before you. And if you go down the list of previous Gairdner Award winners, it is a very impressive list. There's many scientists who at the time and later also made major discoveries.
Congratulations to Dr. Nusser. Dr. Mina Bissell is our next Canada Gairdner Award Laureate. Dr. Bissell is awarded for characterizing dynamic reciprocity and the significant role that extracellular matrix signaling and microenvironment play in gene regulation in normal and malignant cells, revolutionizing the fields of oncology and tissue homeostasis.
Everyone has somewhere between 10 trillion, 10 to the 13 cells. Some people say 30 trillion, some say 70 trillion, but it's in trillions. They all have the same DNA. And meaning that the sequence of the genome in all these things is the same. So why aren't you a lump? Why aren't you a nose only? How does your body know that your cheek is your cheek and your elbow your elbow? These molecules are insoluble, they are huge, and for example, one of them that people would recognize is collagen. And they are really, really large molecules, and they're totally insoluble, and they're outside the cell. In the beginning, people just didn't know what ECM was. They didn't know what this molecule even did. They didn't think that it had information. It was a process of development. I think it's going to give rise to one of the most important treatment in the form of an antibody, which is an inhibitory antibody. And this inhibitory antibody attaches to one of the receptors on the cell surface, and there is a huge family of them called integrins. And I finally used an inhibitory antibody to that integrin to bring the level in the surface of the tumor cell from, say, 5x to 1x. You only have one life. Do something good with it and trust yourself and pick up a project that solves a big problem.
Congratulations to Dr. Bissell. The final Canada Gairdner International Awardee this year is Dr. Elaine Fuchs. Dr. Fuchs is awarded for her seminal elucidation of the role of adult skin stem cells in homeostasis, wound repair, inflammation, and cancer.
I've always been fascinated by how tissues make and replace dying cells and how they repair themselves. And it's these fundamental processes that are at the roots of a number of different human diseases, including cancers. And it's these processes then that I've been most interested in trying to understand in the course of my career. I'm being recognized for the fundamental discoveries of the first stem cells, tissue stem cells, which are the stem cells of the skin. And over the years, we've identified where these stem cells are in the skin and learned about their special properties and identified how these stem cells communicate with neighbors in the skin to be able to know when to make tissue, when to make epidermis, hair follicles, sebaceous glands, sweat glands, and then ultimately what goes awry when these stem cells start to acquire mutations that will give rise to various different human disorders such as skin cancers. And so because these were the first stem cells taken from a tissue, and able to be propagated endlessly in the laboratory. Our characterization of those stem cells really provided a platform for the early studies of what are tissue stem cells, what do they do, and how do they do it. One of the most exciting areas for me right now is that we've been looking at inflammatory skin disorders, disorders like psoriasis and atopic dermatitis, some of the most common types of inflammatory disorders, in fact, some of the most common types of human conditions. We've learned that they retain a memory of their inflammatory experiences, and this is packaged into their nucleus. And so we're trying to understand the details of that inflammatory memory with the hope looking forward that in the future, perhaps we can treat some of these types of diseases with an eraser of memory rather than with the current immunosuppressive drugs, which really have many deleterious side effects. We think that the memory that we're unearthing is really one that's going to be broadly applicable to a variety of different disorders.
Congratulations to Dr. Fuchs. Next, I'd like to announce our 2020 John Dirks Canada Gairdner Global Health Award. This award is given to a scientist or scientists whose advances have or will potentially have a significant impact on health outcomes in the developing world. The 2020 John Dirks Canada Gairdner Global Health Award for outstanding achievements in global health research goes to Drs. Quarisha and Salim Abdul Karim. They are awarded for their discovery that antiretrovirals prevent sexual transmission of HIV, which laid the foundations for pre-exposure prophylaxis, PrEP, HIV prevention strategy that is contributing to the reduction of HIV infection in Africa and around the world.
We work broadly in the field of HIV infection, and sub-Saharan Africa bears a disproportionate burden of the global number of infections. So it's home to about 70% of the global burden of infections. A unique feature and characteristics of this epidemic is that young women acquire infection 5 to 7 years before their male peers. There's a disconnect between what is available to prevent infection that women can use and where the burden of infection is. And that gap is on women-initiated prevention technologies that we have focused on.
We started off by describing the epidemiology of HIV infection in women. And so the entire body of knowledge that we're being recognized for comprises our work to find solutions to slow the HIV epidemic in young women. And they range from studies that have tried to answer the question as to why young girls have such high rates of HIV infection. And then we've gone on to testing a whole range of different products. And eventually we showed that an antiretroviral drug, tenofovir, in the gel form was able to prevent HIV. Our research was the first to demonstrate that pre-exposure prophylaxis with antiretroviral drugs could prevent sexual transmission.
The direct impact is access to technologies that work. The indirect impact is really what's inspiring in terms of how the communities that have been devastated by this epidemic have kept their resilience.
So we hope that our research now into the future will be able to develop technologies that will be long-acting. So right now we are developing a technology which uses tenofovir in an implant that would last a whole year, that women can use comfortably, and that it would get widespread implementation to make a real impact on the HIV epidemic. It took us 18 years before we had a first positive result. That kind of perseverance is what's needed if you were to make major breakthroughs.
Congratulations to the Abdul Karims. Finally, I'd like to announce the winner of the 2020 Canada Gairdner Wightman Award. This award goes to a Canadian health researcher whose career demonstrates extraordinary leadership paired with exceptional science. The 2020 Canada Gairdner Wightman Award goes to Dr. Guy Rouleau. Dr. Rouleau is awarded for identifying and elucidating the genetic architecture of neurological and psychiatric diseases, including ALS, autism, and schizophrenia, and his leadership in the field of open science.
The major challenge that has been the focus of my work has been understanding the basic mechanisms of diseases of the brain. It was important to focus on understanding mechanisms of brain diseases because we understand so little about the brain that we have a lot of trouble actually developing new treatments. And so understanding the mechanisms of brain diseases makes finding new treatments easier. I'm being recognized for two bodies of work. The first is the understanding and identification of genetic factors that predispose to diseases of the brain. And these can be either disease-causing genes or it can be genetic mechanisms. An example of a genetic mechanism is exploring de novo mutations as a cause of neurodevelopmental diseases like autism and schizophrenia. I'm also being recognized for work that I've done to explore a new way of doing research, which is essentially one where one breaks down barriers to collaboration so that there's more sharing of information. This is called open science. The goal of open science is to accelerate discovery, and we need to accelerate discovery to be able to find new cures and to be able to help people. What I would like most would be that my research would lead to the development of new treatments for some of the common brain diseases. And this is starting to happen. There is some disease mechanism-focused treatments that are starting to be explored, but I think that this is ultimately going to be the largest impact, is going to be all the different treatments, new treatments that are going to come from what I've done. This prize is really very important for me because it recognizes two things. It recognizes my lifelong work identifying genes and mechanisms for brain diseases. And it also recognizes the work that I've been doing to pioneer open science. When I got the call from Dr. Rossant informing me that I had won the prize, I was really overjoyed. I was very excited. I knew exactly what this prize is, and it is by far the greatest recognition of my work that I could possibly have.
Congratulations to Dr. Rouleau. As Gairdner's president, I'm thrilled to invite these 8 individuals into the Gairdner family, a very distinguished group of researchers responsible for many of the world's most significant advances in science. A large part of Gairdner's core mandate is inspiring the next generation of researchers, innovators, and leaders through our pan-Canadian outreach programs. Over the course of 2020, Gairdner will send our laureates across the country to share their science and stories with faculty members, trainees, and high school students. Check out gairdner.org for a full listing of our events, including symposia and public lectures. Follow us on social media and subscribe to our newsletter to get updated information on everything Gairdner. Congratulations again to our 2020 Canada Gairdner Laureates.